Welcome back to the Occult Detective. I'm Bob Freeman, and today is the last day for taking a trip through Misadventures and High Strangeness. This is Occult Detective, a collection of essays concerning magic and the paranormal, available on Amazon. And I've been reading a random chapter every Wednesday, all month long, to celebrate both Occult Detective October and the Halloween season. So let's take a look at the final chapter of the month. Abandoned houses. One of the biggest struggles in telling these stories is how they're all so interconnected. Today's especially so. As a result, I'll be leaving out a lot of connective strands in order to focus on the subject at hand. Northwest of Somerset, you'll find the Pearsons Mill State Recreational Area, a part of the Greater Mississinewa Reservoir. This is an area locals have always called the Cliffs, where there's a dangerous limestone outcropping where young people would congregate, often leaping into the waters below. There's also an intriguing little cliffside cave, difficult to get to and slither inside, but it was a special place for us. The whole area was. One of our most frequent hangouts was at the top of the hill overlooking these cliffs, in a grand old shelter house that was eventually burned down by practitioners of black magic, but more about that another time. The point being, this was a sacred spot for us, surrounded by thick woodlands where all manner of mysteries were evolving, as we were lured from one revelation to the next. In watching Greg and Dana Newkirk's Hellier series, I was struck by the similarities between our misadventures in the 1980s and those they shared in their documentary. One bit I wish to share now takes us back to the summer of 1986. A lifelong friend of mine had been mushroom hunting in the woods around the Pearsons Mill SRA when he stumbled upon, quite by accident, two abandoned houses deep in the forest. Without exploring them, he headed back, visiting me at my home that very evening. Intrigued, I rounded up my group of erstwhile adventurers and we set out to explore these forgotten structures. Parking just north of the cliffs, 6 of us set out into the woods in the pitch black night. We had just 2 flashlights among us, and they did little to cut through the smothering forest, but eventually we came to the first of the houses. Covered in vines and moss and with trees piercing the windows, the house had been assuredly abandoned for years. I approached the front door, forcing my way inside, and was stunned to see the home completely furnished. The living room had a TV sitting across from a couch, a coffee table between them. A newspaper lay there, open, dated 1966, the year I was born. Pictures hung on the walls. Shelves were still covered in knickknacks. The bedroom had a made bed some animal had been nesting on. The dresser and closets were filled with clothes and shoes. In the kitchen, the cabinets and refrigerator still had food in them. On the dining table were 3 plates with the decayed remains of some long ago meal on them. It was as if whoever had lived there had just vanished. There was a stair leading up to an attic. It was filled with odds and ends. I opened an old trunk and found it filled with materials, oddly enough, from the Urantia cult. That's when we heard a noise downstairs. Everyone got deathly quiet. I crept to the attic door, left open, and I looked down, seeing a full-figured apparition float across the room toward the kitchen, disappearing as it reached the kitchen threshold. We hung around a bit, trying to make contact, but to no avail. It wasn't until years later that, as we revisited that night in discussion, we all realized that in our memories, it had been light in the house. We hadn't needed our flashlights at all. In all our memories, it was as if we had been walking around in a well-lit house. But I digress. Moving on, we made our way through the woods once more, eventually coming to the second house. Unlike the first, this one was empty. Making our way through the barren home, flashlights cutting through the inky black, we were startled when a loud thump pounded against the floor beneath our feet. It happened again. Louder, and the entire floor moved. And then again. We searched the house faster, I was looking for a way downstairs, eventually finding a trap door in the floor of what had probably been a laundry room just off the kitchen. I pulled up the door and shined my light down the stairs. The stairwell was completely filled with brackish water. That's when it came. Leaping out of the water with a mighty splash, my friend screamed in terror and ran from the house for the old pickup truck we'd come in, with no regard for safety, only escape. I reached the truck last, having to jump in the back as they sped away into the night on the back roads of Wabash and Miami counties. I was laughing uncontrollably. See, the chthonic horror that had erupted out of the basement was a carp. Pretty big one, too. The thump and the moving floor, the carp bumping up against it and the floor floating on rotted sills. The houses were left over from when the Army Corps of Engineers came in and constructed the Mississinawa Dam, forcing old Somerset to move to higher ground across from Mount Vernon. The old mill was demolished, cemeteries were relocated, homes were purchased and abandoned, all to control the flooding of the Mississinawa River. It has always pained me that so many sacred sites along the Mississinawa were destroyed in the name of progress, but despite all that, my friends and I still found magic in that place. I still do. I believe you'll find a lot of my tales will keep coming back to that area. It's what I call the haunted Hoosier hinterlands. I think you can see why already. And there you have it. Occult Detective. I really enjoyed putting this book together. I'm working on a follow-up, something that goes a little more in-depth. All right, that's all I have for you today. Stop back in, see what else is cooking as we draw nearer to Samhain and Halloween. Until next time, stay spooky, my friends.